So, welcome to our customer panel. My name is Theo Pham, I'm your moderator, and today we're going to talk to industry experts about how Workday has helped them to navigate through this very particular year. When we talk about innovation and the transformation in retail, there's lots of discussion about the rather customer-facing innovation, like delivery or maybe creating engaging in-store experiences. However, none of that would really work without the right infrastructure in place. And while topics like topics like HR planning, processes, onboarding, and hiring don't seem as flashy as autonomous delivery vehicles, they are as important, or much more important actually, for the success of a retail organization. So today I'm delighted to welcome two industry experts, and we will talk to Franziska of Vielmann and to Nicola of Harrods about their experience in the past year and how implementing Workday has helped them through this transformation. So Franziska is working for Vielmann, which is Germany's leading optician, and Nicola is working for Harrods, the world-famous department store in London. So welcome to our panel. Thank you so much for taking the time today. And if maybe the two of you could introduce yourself, let's start off with Franziska.
Yes, thank you, Theo. My name is Franziska Wiehoff. I work for the company Vielmann for the last 21 years in different positions throughout Europe and especially in HR for the last 15 years. And since January 2020, I'm head of HR IT and therefore responsible for the Workday project management within Vielmann. Vielmann is a family retail optician with almost 21,000 employees and 800 stores in actually 7 different countries throughout Europe.
Thank you. How about you, Nicola?
Hi, thank you. I'm Nicola Skills. I'm the HR Systems Manager at Harrods. I've been at Harrods for about 2.5 years now, so since the very start of the Workday journey. Previous to that, I was at Kering. So Harrods, as you've mentioned, is world-leading department store based in London, in Knightsbridge on the Brompton Road, and is the largest department store in Europe. Harrods has around 12,000 workers, which is made up of employees and contingent workers, and we have a good range of population across retail, hospitality, distribution and support functions.
Thank you very much. So the two of you have been working with Workday, and what I would be interested in is that when you were looking to implement a new system, what was the reason to dive into that process in the first place? Because obviously no one wants to do a whole systems migration. It's not a lot of fun to look at new systems, to implement new stuff. So what were kind of the major pain points or challenges that you were facing when you decided to look into a new system? Maybe if Franziska wants to start.
For Vielmann, we were coming from a very decentralized organization and had a best of breed approach. So in our 7 different countries, we had about 25 different applications for our HR landscape. And therefore we faced some challenges which were that we didn't have any ESS or MSS scenarios, so we actually don't have any possibilities to reach out to our employees or managers. We have a really high manual data entry in all the different systems. We don't have any integrations or almost no integrations between the different systems, which makes our processes very slow. And we were unable to fulfill the store requirements in staff. So we really didn't have enough staff and our customers need to wait too long. So when in 2019, I think it was, our new business strategy implied a new HR strategy, it was clear that we needed to change something or to do something to these challenges.
Thank you, Franziska. How about you, Nicola? What was the situation at Harrods when you were starting this whole process?
Yep, so prior to Workday, so we had a very outdated and disjointed sort of HR systems landscape, and we relied very much on different HR systems, and it all required a lot of manual data entry. So whether that was from our recruitment system, our HR system, and our absence tool, we didn't have at the time any manager self-service or employee self-service. It was all very much driven by our HR shared service team, all manual intervention. So our processes were just not smooth at all. So, for instance, any people processes that happened, it was all done via an Excel form. That was then sent round emails for approvals, lots of different emails flying around, and then would end up with our HR shared service team, who then just had to manually enter data into all of the different systems. And also, as well, I think one of the biggest things for us was that employees didn't have access to these HR systems, so they couldn't even look at their contracts, they couldn't check their absence balance correctly. It very much heavily relied on our HR shared service team. So really looking for a new HR system, a new piece of functionality that could give access to our employee managers was really important for us.
Okay. Yeah, so to me, these two situations seem kind of similar. I mean, both of your companies have been leading in your industries for quite a time. You've been along for quite some time. I mean, how old is Harrods now?
Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot here. I want to say 180 years. Hopefully I've got that right. And to the people from Harrods listening, hopefully that's okay.
Okay. So definitely long before Microsoft Excel existed.
Yeah.
Um, But what I think is quite normal with, say, with big organizations that grow over time, that obviously over time you will add more and more tools as the company grows. And so, then at some point you will have a big fat jungle of different tools that may or may not play nice with each other. So I think it makes sense to at some point to say, okay, now we've had enough of this. We have to kind of integrate everything, even though everyone who's involved, especially the two of you, know that it's going to be a lot of pain at first to do this whole migration, to retrain everybody on your new systems, but knowing that in the long term it will really pay off. So the next thing I would be interested in is that both of your companies are obviously leading in your industry. I think every company would be delighted to work with you. So I'm sure that you've had a lot of pitches who were trying to, basically start working with you. What in the end led you to choose Workday when faced with different solutions?
For us at Fielmann, it was that when looking at our HR infrastructure, it was clear that we needed to change something, and there were actually three main capabilities that spoke for Workday as a platform, and that made the Workday as our platform of choice. The first thing was that we actually wanted to have a high usability of the system so that employees and managers are able to spend time in the store and not on administrative tasks. The second one was that we really had a high wish to have everything integrated in one system, and Workday, with their power of one, were able to sell this. And the third point for us was that we needed a high improvement on digitalization in comparison to having a fax machine or paper-based processes. We really wanted to digitalize our processes and thought that Workday will be the system of choice.
Okay, sounds really interesting. How about the situation at Harrods? Do you still have a lot of paper to push around, or are you already fully digitized?
I would say 90% digitalized. So Harrods wanted to be able to just have greater data visibility on one single platform. So to provide more accurate reporting and dashboards so the business can make more informed decisions. And like I said previously, we wanted to give power back to people processes, back to our managers and our employees through a self-service tool. And I think one great thing with Workday that worked for us was the fact that it's the app on the mobile. You know, majority of our population are either shop floor based in our distribution centres, they're not on a computer day to day. So having the mobile application and being able to update their details was definitely a real positive point for us and with Workday. And also just having a simplified HR tech landscape. So having that one single source of truth platform and then being able to integrate with other systems. We didn't want to look for a new piece of technology where we then had to buy a different recruitment system, a different maybe absence or time tracking system. So just having everything in one place was really important to us.
So I think the two of you are mentioning very interesting points. So on the one hand, we have data and system integration, which obviously gives the transparency that you talked about, but also it's a lot more efficient. But what I think is also quite interesting is that you mentioned, usability and self-service. Because when we think about consumer apps like, say, Instagram, we all know that they're being A/B tested to the maximum so that they're really, really to use. And oftentimes those enterprise solutions, they don't put that much thought into it. So it's great to hear that you feel that Workday is addressing that, because especially when you are onboarding new people all the time who have to learn the new systems, from my own experience, if people find that it's not fun to use or too difficult to use, they may try it once or twice, and then they completely give up on it and just try to do their own workaround. And they're like, oh, screw this new tool. I'm going to do it the old way with email and Excel, even though they're not supposed to do that. So it's obviously very, very important that, that even on the, or especially on the enterprise side, that the usability is really, excellent in order to empower people to do self-service. So obviously, so the question goes to Franziska. So you being a international company complicates things a little bit because in every country systems are a little bit different. Can you tell us a little bit about the international implementation?
Maybe I switched to the project Start, which started in February 2020, and we are implementing Workday for 7 countries throughout Europe. So it's not that complicated as having a project with 50 countries all over the world. It's only 7 countries in Europe, but anyhow, it makes it a little bit more complicated, but not that complicated because actually Workday comes along with good best practices, which were our base to implement Workday and to internationally align our processes so that we have one global standard for hiring employees or recruiting new employees or candidates. So looking at our project, we actually started in February 2020 with 2 phases, and we are now 3/4 into phase 1, when we will go live in March 2021. So 13 months for 7 countries, for actually 4 different modules within Workday, which is HR Core, Recruiting, Learning, and Absence Management. Those are the main modules that we use in phase 1. And then after having gone live in 2021, we will start phase 2 in autumn 2021, which will last about 10 to 12 months. And then we will implement further modules for Workday, which are talent and performance, time tracking, scheduling, expenses, planning, and I think some advanced HR core and compensation themes.
So just from the functions that you mentioned, we can see that the scope of Workday is really, really big. So moving to Harrods now, which of the core functionalities were you focusing on when doing the implementation?
Yep, so we went live in May 2019, and we sort of did a bit of a 2-phase rollout. So our phase 1, where we went live with core HR, recruiting, comp, advanced comp, talent performance, and absence, and we felt going live with all of those modules at the same time made sense just because they had touch points on one another. And then in March of last year, we went live with learning. So that sort of came at a second stage, and we decided that really just so we didn't put too much change on our population all at one go. And it felt nicely that learning came a bit later and came at a good time as well.
So everyone who has done such a major implementation knows that this is quite complicated and hard work as it is. Now everything is obviously being complicated with COVID-19, which started in March of last year already. So can you tell us how this has impacted the project implementation and maybe even your business overall? Can you share some of your experience around that, Franziska?
Sure. Our project was planned before COVID, and we planned a big project mainly based in Hamburg in our headquarters, and project meetings with our international colleagues every 4 weeks. So it was really planned as a normal Vielmann project. And then about 10 days before our first project meeting, COVID hit. And we needed to change something very quickly. So from one day to another, we replanned and did actually everything remote. Gladly, we had implemented MS Teams in January 2020, so we had a good base to communicate remotely, but actually we weren't really used to collaborating virtually. So from the first look, a big challenge, but actually we turned it into good opportunities too, because our project for now is on time. We are quite happy to work remotely, as we actually found out that working remotely makes our project a lot quicker to collaborate. We just have a lot easier way to exchange with colleagues from Switzerland, Austria, Poland, and so on than we did before, because before we would have waited 4 weeks for our next project meeting to discuss different options, and now we just stick to MS Teams and quickly ask our questions and really quickly solve problems or challenges remotely. That works quite well. It's, as you see, it is in a very efficient way to work. And also what was good from our side, we actually, it was a good point that COVID starts, because COVID started before our global design workshops. So we already knew that COVID will impact our business a little bit. For example, with COVID, we changed that for recruiting processes we use for the first interviews. We don't do them in our offices anymore. We do them in Teams. So we were able to actually implement those changes that COVID caused into our new processes. There were actually 3 big changes that came up with Corona. One I just mentioned, we are doing our recruiting process very much virtually. Then we needed to quickly change our education model. Before, we did all the learning processes in different hotels or education offices. And we changed that within 2 weeks. We changed it to remote education, and we are glad that with our Go Live on Workday, we also have learning as a module, and then we'll be able to do even more e-learnings within Workday. That is good. And one challenge or one big change we had was actually concerning our stores, which doesn't really have an impact on our Workday project, but has a great impact on Vielmann as a company. As I mentioned earlier, we have a big problem with customers waiting. When COVID hits, we actually had the opportunity to implement in a really quick way 2 new functionalities for Vielmann. We now ask customers to do appointments on our Vielmann website. And a second one is a digital waiting list. So if a customer comes to our store, he doesn't have an appointment, then we put him on a digital waiting list and tell him, well, come back in 20 minutes and you don't need to wait. And we weren't actually, we didn't implement that before because we didn't know really how the customer will will accept this new model, and with COVID that changed, and we just implemented it, even though it was not 100% perfect. But we started with an 80% solution, and we are now implementing how do you call that? I don't know. We are implementing improvements on those systems one at a time, and I think that's a great impact for us on the Workday side, because with our project right now, we will go live with an 70 to 80% solution, and then we will improve it when we are already live and when we have the feedback from our employees and managers what needs to be changed.
Yeah, there's this old saying, better done than perfect. And I think it's quite fascinating that you're willing to, now also implement a non-perfect solution, because it's just time critical right now. Maybe just on the bit with the waiting list and the registration, do you feel that this is something that has been requested or has been on the roadmap for a couple of years, but was always kind of either deprioritized or maybe not being shipped because it was not perfect? And now you can see that, if we have to, it is actually possible to do it faster. What are your thoughts about that?
I think at Vielmann we really had a big change in the last 3 years, having a stronger focus on digitalization than before. So I think, for the last 3 years, probably we already thought about those possibilities to work together with the customers. But I don't know if it was already in the pipeline for the last 3 years and we didn't want to implement it. I think it was more like an idea that already existed, and then COVID came up and we just said, okay, now let's do it right now.
Yeah, okay, because there's basically no choice, right? We have to do it, but when we have to, we can be pretty fast and efficient. Nicola, I understand that you also introduced quite a lot of innovation at Harrods, especially when it comes to learning and onboarding. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, like I said previously, we went live with learning in March of last year, a couple of weeks before the first lockdown came in London. So it was a bit of a godsend that we went live with learning. So prior to Workday Learning, every Monday we had induction for all of our new starters, where they would come to our Knightsbridge store and have half a day induction. Then obviously with a national lockdown, can't mix anymore, we can't go to store, and it was a bit of like, okay, what are we going to do now? So we managed to put all of our onboarding online via an e-learning module. It's live with one of our learning managers, and I think it's just a real credit to our learning and development team how quickly they made all of our training sessions and learning modules to e-learning and pushing them on Workday, because throughout the project, e-learning, as much as it was, we need to move towards e-learning, but classroom based was such a big thing for Harrods, especially for our retail staff. We need to get everyone together in classroom, but as we know, in the last year, classrooms no longer, everything does need to be virtual. So definitely the teams there created a lot more modules, and really good feedback from people. I've just had a new starter in my team who had virtual onboarding, and she said it was, would have been just as good as being there in person. So that's really important. I think probably with every company, when COVID hit, it was very reactive for all companies, and how we change things on Workday. A lot of a big thing for us as well was around our notifications and comms that went out via Workday. It mentioned going into the store, what you do on your first day. So we had to quickly review all of those and change the wording on that to sort of be, we're at home, working from home, and this is sort of how onboarding is, or how things work now. A big change for us as well was the furlough scheme that was introduced. I think when furlough came into play last March, I remember looking on communities, because my manager came to me and said, we need to start recording this in Workday. I don't know how we do it, but we need to do it ASAP. And I remember looking on communities and there was hardly any posts about furlough leave. And I was just thinking, oh gosh, how are we going to manage this? And it's just, I think, so interesting that now, because everyone in the world is going through this global pandemic and everyone is having the same troubles, like you can always find the answer on community now. But yeah, we had to quickly find a way of how we record people being on furlough leave in Workday. It was very reactive at the start. I think sometimes when I look back now, I may have changed how I would have done it, but at the time it still works now. So why fix something that's not broken? But I would definitely say they were the main things for us. Other big things, not necessarily Workday, but with recruitment, moving all of our interviews online. Like you said, Francisca, with Teams, Microsoft Teams, having that virtually for our recruitment team, being able to interview. And we did have to change some of our recruitment business processes to support with, the new ways of working and being virtual as well. Yeah, definitely a lot of change from our design workshops in the last year. It's quite, looking back actually and thinking about it now, the amount of change that we've made in Workday is actually quite significant. But I think if we didn't have Workday, we wouldn't be in a good as place as we are now. So I think it is really important when you do have such a sophisticated piece of HR technology enabled to help you with your daily work.
Yeah. So thanks so much for sharing those experiences. I think it's really interesting to see just how many different changes and innovations you have introduced in such a short time. And obviously, none of us want to be in this situation. We want it to stop as soon as possible. But from what I'm hearing, there are quite a lot of things that are there to stay that just make the whole organization a lot more efficient and will make both the, processes in the background, but also the customer interaction a lot more, convenient and practical. So I think, long term, those definitely make sense and it's good. And they had to be done at some point. So why not just do it now when maybe we don't have, anything else to do? We might just as well build up on our infrastructure. So now we talked about the implementation, the different use cases. Francisca, can you tell us a little bit about the first benefits that you have experienced along the way?
So actually, we are not live yet, but we already know how Workday works, so I can say something about it. Actually, Workday is in line with what we expected it to be. The potential benefits we saw or we identified were usability for employees and managers, integration in one platform, and the digitalization. I think those three benefits that we identified are totally there. But actually, we have some more benefits that came along the way. I would say one Nicola just mentioned. We really adore using Workday community because you always find an answer to your questions. Maybe not in the first day, but 3 days later, you'll find something to the topic you're you are searching for. And then really Workday changed our approach, how we look at business processes. Before, we always thought that we need a solution for every country. And now we base on the Workday best practices and just go along the way and only change those best practices if it's really necessary for a country. So we end up having global designed processes in most of our modules that didn't need to be changed a little bit. But looking at our 7 countries in Europe, it's really, in most of our modules, we have business processes that are globally aligned. Which was actually something Nicola also mentioned before, was the part of transparency. We didn't expect that to be or to have as high as an impact, but actually it turned out that was the thing that our employees and managers perceived the most or the biggest in our user acceptance test. the transparency about their data was really the biggest point or the biggest applause we got there. And then after go live, we're expecting that we will be able to manage our business processes by ourselves and will not depend on external consultants. So we are quite happy about that too.
So I think measuring the benefits of such a big solution can be a bit tricky at times because A, it touches so many different parts of the organization, and B, because it's not directly related to, say, something like sales, where you can exactly measure, okay, we did X and then Y came out of it. So my question to Nicola, at Harrods, what is your approach to try to measure the benefits that you're gaining from the solution?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the project, we worked on establishing a baseline with the Workday value team to set project ambition, potential benefits, and assess our maturity level. And just before Christmas, looking at that baseline, we worked on building a value realization to measure the benefits that have generated from Workday and also identify our potential area of improvement. And some of our benefits were, I think our biggest benefit is our one single source platform for all of our HR processes and data, having all of that under one roof and then feeding our downstream systems, I think is probably one of the biggest benefits that we've got. And then also just some other benefits would be around data security and data accuracy as well. I think it's important for employees to know that their personal data is safe, and having that just in one system I think it assures employees of that, and definitely the security that we have in Workday as well. Also, one of our big benefits that we saw last year was around our bonus and salary review process. So prior to Workday, it was very much probably took around 3 months. Data was downloaded from a system and then was passed to our HR business partners. As we all know, as soon as you download data out of a system, it's out of date automatically. So when the data was received back, there was always problems with it. But now having that whole process in Workday, the data was always up to date, and the process improved, and probably in total took maybe 1 or 2 weeks or so to actually from start to finish. So that was a real improvement. And also just the role around HR being more of that strategic partner to the business and more of that advisor role. So as I said at the start, prior to Workday, more of our HR shared service team, their role was very much data entry of all the data they received, but now their role is partnering with the business and advising them on how to do a process, why would you do a process, and I think it just gives more exposure for our HR team.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine that this makes the whole job more enjoyable for everybody involved. As you said, maybe less of the tedious, very manual work and maybe more
Yeah.
strategic, conceptual work. So I think this is also a great benefit that maybe is not as obvious when you first introduce such a system, because then you maybe just think about the efficiencies that you might gain, but maybe not think about what you can do with this now freed up capacity that you will gain. So this is very interesting to see that HR is being elevated within the organization and can also take on more of the roles and responsibilities that they're actually came to work for, instead of dealing just with systems and processes. So
Yeah,
that's very
exactly.
fascinating. Yeah. So now that you've been live for quite a while, what does the roadmap look like for the next couple of years? What kind of features or functionalities are you looking to implement next?
Yep. So actually, in November, just gone, we launched Workday Help, which is the new case management functionality of Workday, part of the people experience module. So prior to Workday Help, we did have a self-service tool. Again, it was one of our legacy systems, and wasn't, sorry, a ticketing tool, not a self-service tool. And employees would just either call up or email our shared service team with their query. They wouldn't necessarily know where their query was sat, who it was sat with. But so now we've implemented Workday Help. Employees again have full visibility of that ticket, and that is actually, it's the best feedback we've had from our employees about all of Workday. Actually, they've all just said it's the easiest module of Workday to use. They like to see that where their ticket's sat, who the query sat with, and there's like chat functionality which they really like as well. So I'm glad in a bad year we were able to implement something that really supported our employees. And then I think looking through this year, definitely as part of that people experience, the new homepage that Workday has brought out, the new solid knowledge base, and just looking at journeys as well. I think working virtually and knowing that this is the normal and is going to go on for quite some time now, just how can we make onboarding for new starters virtually more welcoming for employees, make sure they've got all the information they need, and really just how can we utilise Workday at the best of its ability.
So a lot of people who are in attendance right now, they are either considering working with Workday or they are already working with Workday and are thinking about how to best make use of the powerful capabilities and how to leverage the tool to the full extent. So what is like one piece of advice from your experience that you would give these people who either want to work with Workday or who just want to make more use of it? Franziska, what's the one piece of advice?
I think my advice is more for the new customers. I would put the advice that you shouldn't be afraid of the ambitious project planning, because when you look at or when you talk to Workday and look at a possible project planning, maybe you think, "Oh, we cannot do that." And for Vielmann, we weren't sure if we would be able to implement a new system within 13 months for all of our 7 countries in a Big Bang approach. And really, it works. We are on time, we are on budget, and we will be going live in March. So I think what Workday comes along is a great possibility to rely on. It's Workday comes along with best practices, not only for the business processes but also for the project management, and it makes it really reliable to be able to do a project in the expected or in the expected amount of time. That is great. Yeah. Maybe on top of that, what I didn't expect to be that way, when doing a Workday project, you are able to look at the system really, really early during the project. Like after 2 or 3 months, you see the first prototype, and now 3 quarters into the project, we know what we know how the system will look like, and we have the possibility to have 2 or 3 months now to prepare our go live and to prepare all the documents we need for the go live. So yeah, we are quite happy, and it's a lot of work. You need to say that, but it is possible to implement Workday for 7 countries in 13 months, no problem.
Okay, so you're saying even though it does look very ambitious and it is very ambitious, you shouldn't really be afraid of it because it is feasible even in this current situation because there's a lot of infrastructure and support in place. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
exactly.
Yeah,
And experience also.
and experience. Great. How about you, Nicola? What should people definitely be paying attention to?
So I think even before go live and then even afterwards, I think testing is such a huge importance for any implementation or any new piece of functionality that you're planning to put into Workday. I think don't underestimate the amount of time that you need on testing, because the more you test, especially before go live, the more you're gonna go through the processes, and not just necessarily familiarize yourself with the processes and how they work, but also try and iron out any of those little kinks maybe that there is to get it as good as you can get it for go live. And also involving, I think, as many HR people in testing, because testing is the place where people are going to learn how to use a new system, and also you're not afraid to break your testing environment. A lot of people, are afraid to click a button in your live production environment because they're unsure of what it's going to do. They don't want to break a system. So I think the more HR people you can get involved in your testing, the more confident they're going to feel with this new piece of functionality. And then I think just on top of that, one big thing is if you're not going live with Workday payroll, but you are going to have maybe a payroll integration, it's so important to involve members of your payroll team from the very start of your project. I think that's something that Harrods definitely underestimated at the start. You think HR project, maybe not going to have much of an impact on payroll, but it has the biggest impact on payroll. So the earlier that you can get them involved and as part of those decisions, I think when you go through to your sort of payroll testing, will be much smoother and much easier.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I've learned quite a lot, and I'm sure the audience did as well. My main takeaways are that such a big project is still feasible and possible during this situation. That remote project management does work fine, and the two of you are proof of that. I learned that a retail organization can benefit on an organizational level with things like increased data availability and transparency. But what I also found quite interesting is also how you highlighted how different stakeholders can benefit from these changes, starting from customers who may have a better customer experience in the store because now they can just schedule some appointments, as we saw in the case of Fielmann. Or you talked about how employees have a much easier time now with everything, starting with self-service, with things like remote onboarding or even e-learning. But also I thought it was fascinating to see the role of HR changing, now being less burdened with systems and data entry and tedious manual work, and now with more time and capacity to work on the more strategic topics. So I think it was a really neat discussion around how to do the actual implementation, but also how Workday can benefit the organization as a whole, as well as the different stakeholders. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences and for taking the time today. Thank you, and greetings to Hamburg and to London.
Thank you.